I'm going to talk about this dunk, this dunk, this dunk, this dunk, this dunk to explain how to be creative through the lens of the dunk contest. So just some tips for creativity from books I've read and things like that. So creativity is for savants. This is a myth. Well, there are savants. So of course, like Michael Jordan seems to be this basketball genius. Of course, he worked really hard, but also had these different gifts, just physical gifts that helped him with basketball and with dunking. Twyla Tharp, in her book, The Creative Habit, talks about these two options where you can have this belief that creativity comes from some transcendent, inexplicable Dionysian act of inspiration, a kiss from God on your brow that allows you to give the world the magic flute, or be hard work. And her whole book is about it being hard work. She says creativity is a habit, and the best creativity is a result of good work habits. So here are some of the things that Michael Jordan could jump very high, but of course he was like working out to do that. But one thing that he was gifted with was these very large hands, which help with the dunks. It's not like that is everything that goes into it, but that is something that went into it. Kobe Bryant didn't have as large of hands, and Phil Jackson says this is the main difference in their game, or like one of the differences is their hands. Though he does say Kobe has a better left hand, skill-wise. Kobe was able to overcome that and win a dunk contest himself, but it is good to look at other people who won the dunk contest. Of course, Nate Robinson, Spud Webb, some of the shorter players to win the dunk contest, they overcame that height disadvantage. And Mac McClung, not the tallest player either, and he was able to win a dunk contest, and he is someone who worked hard at that. And sadly, like, there's this ESPN article where he talks about being kind of trapped in this identity of being a very good dunker, but hey, good problem to have. Then you can see this creativity applied. This is an example from YouTube, though he does happen to be a dunker. Jordan Kilgannon, these are some of his most popular videos, and if he was in the NBA, he would definitely have won a dunk contest with the dunks that he does. And this is not just like this God-given talent. You can, of course, with the beauty of YouTube, go to oldest and then see that he was just documenting his progress through the years and developing this. The second creativity tip is to double down. Here's Vince Carter's second dunk from the 2000 dunk contest. And something that I think has been called out but went completely unnoticed at the time because we were so excited to see this is the first dunk and the second dunk were the same dunk. He just approached it from a different place. So he took something that was working, did it again, got a 50 on the first one and a 49 on the second one. So maybe one of the judges kind of saw through this. But if something is working, double down on it. Make more of that same thing. If you find a topic and format that you like making, if you're making videos, double down on that, especially if that seems to be working. And we see this like at all levels of entertainment, that James Cameron had the Terminator, then he made The Abyss, which wasn't as successful at the box office, so he returned to the Terminator, and it was another smash hit with Judgment Day, one of my favorite movies. Then Mighty Ducks, another one of my favorite movies, is D2. So this is just doubling down on what works, and you can do this over and over and over. If something is working, keep doing it. Though at some point, some of the joy fades. Though, like, what was it? Probably like 5, 6, and 7. It was pretty awesome. Then another thing is you can keep doubling down on the same thing. At some point, it may grow stale, and you might need Robert Downey Jr. to come save it. And looking at some YouTubers applying this, Ali Abdaal did this really well, where he's like gone through different niches. So he was creating a lot of content for students, then he wasn't a student anymore. So then it became productivity, and he was able to move into a little bit of like the tech niche with his iPad videos. And then he just continued to evolve. And in each of those phases, he would explore what was working, double down on that until it stopped working or didn't make sense for him to create anymore. Like, he couldn't just do student content forever. And then was able to start to create business content. He's an author now, so he can talk about writing books, and on and on and on. So he would double down until it stopped working, move to something else, double down, and continue on with that. And someone else doing this in a different way, not just on YouTube. He eventually kind of like left that, became a boxer, which is a pretty crazy thing to do. And then it became this thing of being able to box other celebrities, other like UFC fighters. He'd be able to win, but make a bunch of money. So if you're able to have like a somewhat safe fight and make a lot of money doing it, then that seems like a pretty good plan for a lot of people. And he did that all the way to being able to box Anthony Joshua. And sometimes I forget that his brother boxed Floyd Mayweather, which seems like such a crazy thing that happened. Next up, combine things. So this is one of my favorite dunks. I don't know that this is like everyone's favorite, but Jason Richardson off the glass and through the legs. And this, of course, is combining a couple different dunks. These aren't the only people doing these dunks, but Vince Carter did it between the legs, and then T-Mac, not in the dunk contest, but in the All-Star game, off the glass. So Jason Richardson off the glass, between the legs. Great dunk. And you see examples of combining things in different media. So in comics, I don't know that this is like the most loved series of things, but it was one of my favorite things that happened when I was a kid. Was like, oh, there's DC versus Marvel, and then a few years after that, like Marvel versus Capcom, or Capcom versus Street Fighter, and all of that. But yeah, DC versus Marvel was this awesome thing that happened. But then there were these amalgam comics where they just combined two characters. So you can see like Batman and Wolverine here, and then that creates Dark Claw. And there was just a bunch of these different one-offs, I think, where it was, just these like combinations of characters. And again, back to YouTube. So binging with Babish, this was this great combination of cooking, like creating this cooking channel, but also combining it with pop culture. So he would create dishes, and some of his most popular videos still to this day are recreating dishes from TV shows, movies. So from Ratatouille, from SpongeBob SquarePants. And someone else that combined things with pop culture, Bill Simmons, who of course is like now like one of the top execs at Spotify, but it was built through writing. So he was always combining sports and pop culture, and really was like one of the pioneers for doing this. That this wasn't something that national columnists did in newspapers. They wouldn't talk about sports and then in the next sentence compare it to pop culture. But that was something that he did. He had very long columns, way more space because he was writing on the internet, always like a little bit ahead of the curve with technology, and built up a pretty incredible career combining things, sports and pop culture. Next lesson, fail, fail, fail. Nate Robinson, one of my favorite players because I went to UW. So he won 3 dunk contests and missed a bunch of dunks along the way, but was able to succeed, eventually hit those dunks and win these contests. I do think Andre Iguodala should have won one of those, but this is an example where he kept going. And I remember watching this with some friends, and at a certain point it's like, oh man, he's missing a lot, but like, come on. But I did admire that he did just keep doing it and eventually did hit the dunk. And we see examples of people failing over and over and over and eventually being able to win. So The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is, so up here it says over 8 million copies sold, but for nonfiction authors, I think this is like the top, like in the top 5 of nonfiction books sold in the past like 10 years or something. So in this interview with David Perel, David asks him, wasn't Psychology of Money rejected? And Morgan Housel says, yes, by every U.S. publisher. And then further on, he's just talks about not thinking that they're all idiots now because look how successful this book is. Instead, he says, there's none of that because it's all very subjective and you really don't know what's going to hit. You really have no idea what's going to work and what's not going to work. I don't have any ill feelings about that. It's a really hard thing to figure out what makes a book tick. Then the last dunk contest creativity lesson here is iron sharpens iron. Of course, here's Aaron Gordon with probably a lot of people think this is the best dunk of all time. For me, yeah, it's definitely like up there. Of course, he didn't win the dunk contest famously, and Zach LaVine won it. They had this great duel though, and pushed each other to do better and better dunks. And that's what can happen with creativity, that you can become more and more and more creative if you're able to be in competition with other people, and or just in general to have other people pushing you to be better. So this is Jeffrey Katzenberg. He was close to being successor to be the CEO of Disney. That did not happen. He left Disney, started DreamWorks, created Shrek, and then the year that Shrek came out, Disney and Pixar released Monsters, Inc., but he got the last laugh. Shrek won the Academy Award, the very first Academy Award for animated feature film, and it was with Shrek, which was this movie that intentionally inverted all of the tropes of Disney movies of fairy tales. And it was a movie that probably wouldn't exist if he wasn't pushed out and in competition with Disney. Then you see this in wrestling. NWO started, then DX came, and then they just pushed each other, though not directly, because of course it was on separate networks, but you'd see NWO doing some crazy thing, turning Rey Mysterio Jr. into a rocket to fling into the side of an RV. I guess it was a trailer. And then DX, did they bring a tank in and shoot at like a WCW show? Like, not actually, but yeah, they pushed each other to be crazier and crazier, and this is one of the best eras in wrestling. That's it for the creativity and dunking lessons here. I thought I had more, but I guess that's it. All right, thanks for checking this out.